Heavenly Delusion is one of the most underrated anime in recent years. Here's 108 facts about the anime, manga, the author, and the team behind this mind-bending story. Heads up, there are spoilers ahead, especially if you haven't read the manga. Kiriko does have some romantic feelings for Maru, even though they themselves don't realize it yet. As we see in the most recent chapters, when Maru calls another girl cute, Kiriko gets jealous over it multiple times. The older, or might I say first generation of kids, like Kona and Asura, have more powers and were allowed to be freer thinkers than the subsequent generations of kids. Asura was born into a body that could not bear its own mind. As the first generation of Kirikos, it seems that they tried to put too many abilities into the kid. Whereas the next year, in Tokyo's year, each kid has one or maximum two superhuman traits, so I guess the scientists learned from Asura's case. With every generation, the scientists are updating their experiments, deliberately making them not too superior and easier to control as experiments. One example of this is we all know Mimihime, who is in the same year as Tokyo, has clear prophecy abilities, though not on the same level as Asura. The kids in the year below her also have prophecy abilities, as we can see in this scene, but all they're able to do is say danger, danger, and sense something is wrong, but their prophecy powers are not as clear as Mimihime's visions. Who knows what's going to happen? Mimihime first predicted the bombing at the academy after Taka nearly broke his neck from this incident. She says she just had a feeling something else was going to fall, but of course, she never knows when her predictions will come true. She just knows that they will happen. Some of the manga scenes excluded in the anime season 1 includes Kiriko getting her period for the first time. She fainted, and Maru carried her to find help. They were both super confused, and this happened after the Shiro scene on the rooftop. Another scene in the manga that they didn't include in the anime, one that I thought was pretty funny and showed how sheltered the kids were, was when Mimihime and Shiro escaped from the academy. They run into this car. Shiro thought it was an extra-large cleaning robot and wondered why it was there, but it was just Aoshima coming to pick them up. This was when the four kids escaped from the academy at the end of season 1. In this moment, Aoshima asked, "Is the other three with you?" There was only Anzu and Taka besides Shiro and Mimihime. This means there was a fifth kid that escaped, but we don't know who yet. The author of Heavenly Delusion is Masakazu Ishiguro. He first got the idea to write this story while he was having a walk, which is one of his favorite things to do. He tried to fantasize what the scenery of his walk would look like if the world would have been destroyed. When asked why he was inspired to write about a post-apocalyptic world, he said, "The essence of humanity would be revealed if material civilizations and laws were lost." He wanted to bring out the theme of what it means to be human. In an interview, the author said that there were multiple inspirations for Heavenly Delusion, but if he had to pick one, it would be the vintage MA-1 Air Force jumper that he bought from overseas. He came up with the idea for Kiriko's character while looking at it. Kiriko technically has two ages. The age of her body is 20, whereas his mind is 18. Apparently, the author didn't think Heavenly Delusion would be suitable for an anime adaptation. The story is complicated, and he created with the intention for it to be read multiple times. When he first started writing, he already had the ending planned. As a reader, I must admit at times it doesn't feel that way, but apparently he does. It was originally meant to finish at 8 volumes, but he went on continuing with the story as planned without any extra stories being cut. His favorite faces to draw are Kiriko and Robin's, ironic combo. He didn't expect Robin to be hated this much by the audience. All he can say is that he was born in the story out of sheer necessity and that he's a very important character. Robin tried to kill Kiriko. It's not confirmed in the manga, but we can see his face of shock, almost like someone he shot came back to life and he couldn't believe it. In a skip manga scene, when Maru was drying Kiriko's hair, he finds a wound besides the stitches from the operation, which we now know is the gunshot wound from Robin. It seems that Robin and Kiriko has actually done it before, judging from the flashback through his sister's perspective, looking at him in his sleep, saying he's a heavy sleeper. It's implied they did it right next to him while he's asleep. Mina really is the mother of the Academy kids. She's the one who gave birth to them in heaven. She designs the new superhuman breeds, acts as a birthing machine, and pumps them out via her artificial womb. In order to learn how to do this, as an AI, she needs data to evolve. So they took students, staff, other candidates, and connected them to Mina while they were still alive, and Mina used their bodies freely to conduct tests and experiments. Mina's intentions isn't clear, but it's hinted throughout the story via a few occasions. To name a few, remember when someone sent that nude pic of Mimihime to Shiro? And someone altered the footage or basically covered for Tokyo and Kona when they were off making babies? It seems like that it was all Mina, and that it really wants the Kiriko children to procreate. I have some theories about this. Watch that video here. Kona was 17 when him and Tokyo first got together. Tokyo is 14 when she gave birth to Maru. Maru is the son of Tokyo and Kona. There's a clone of Tokyo's son. One is called Yamato, and the other is Maru. It is not known which of the two is the real son and which is the clone. Maru's mission, however, is to find Yamato. Asura can predict the future, can levitate, has telekinesis powers, superhuman intelligence, can heal people, and manipulate video footage. Kona is the oldest student at the academy. He is the only member of the class because his classmate Asura has already died. One of Kona's superhuman abilities is his power to draw visions of the future, which we are hinted to at multiple times in the story. In this room, we see a lot of drawings that foreshadows the future. Obvious one is the one with the two babies and the egg. That's referring to the cloning of Maru and Yamato. He gives a painting of just one baby to Tokyo later. This shows the one she actually gave birth to. This painting he drew was ironically given to Cuckoo, and she's the one who turns into this man-eater. Episode 4 of Heavenly Delusion is sneakily called Cuckoo. In this episode, Cuckoo takes Tokyo to see the faceless babies, and we thought that's all she does. But this also is the episode where Maru and Kiriko fight the fish man-eater with legs, who we now know is Cuckoo herself. Man-eater powers will be similar to the powers they had when they were human, so we can look at what traits each kid has to predict which man-eater they will become. The bird monster that ate the innkeeper's son is Taka. The one from the garage? That's Oma. Her powers trap you in hallucinated materializations of your worst fears, just like what we see happen with Kiriko. The spider monster that freezes things? This one is Nanaki. She's the one who was a couple with Iwa. We see them kissing in heaven when they were younger. The couple that had a kid with Juchi and tries to escape with him was none other than those from the academy. The author actually hinted that the Spider-Man eater is Nanaki via this volume cover. The broken window pane spells out Japanese name of Nanaki in hiragana. Nanaki and Iwa both wore this matching bracelet in this scene, and if you look past all the blood splatters, you can actually see there's something around the left wrist or leg of the spider, which is assumed to be that bracelet. Through Jugo, the offspring of Juchi and Nanaki, it is proven that even a Kiriko plus a human can make a Kiriko. Every academy kid can potentially come back as man-eaters after death, if their core was not crushed properly. We see this happen with Nanaki, who was hung without her core destroyed and became this spider man-eater. Same with Cuckoo, who became the fish man-eater after she died. This means Mimahime safely avoided her ever becoming a man-eater, since her core was destroyed by Maru. But we can't say the same for Shiro. His brains were blown out, but not his core, so maybe he'll be coming back as a man-eater in future chapters. The button Shiro was holding onto when he died was the button that gets ripped off Mimihime's uniform by the stream after he leaps to save her. The academy was created to be this utopia, where this breed of humans grow up with no conception of sex or gender. Half of the kids at the academy have both sexes, as we can see from Michika and Oma. They have the reproductive organs of both male and female. Gender expression and sexual identity are important themes in the story, according to the author. The school is deliberately shown as a kind of thought experiment in a world where sexual elements are abolished. The reason the author came up with the gender bender situation with Kiriko and Haruki was because he himself have explored the sexually ambiguous parts of himself. He agrees that the masculine and feminine side of his mind are not as clearly separated as the physical sex and wanted to explore that in his story. The director hired all of these engineers, created Heaven to start gene editing, made artificial food, birthed all these superhuman kids, all to prepare for life after the Great Disaster, which she was expecting. The Kiriko was meant to usher in a life without disease and hunger. They were designed to never get sick and live forever. This is why the director panics so much when Taro dies of sickness, because she had the idea to eventually transplant herself into one of the kids to live forever, and they weren't meant to ever get sick. Originally, she wanted to transfer her mind, basically her brain, to Aoshima, who she promoted to deputy director so that when she made the brain transplant, she will still have all the highest clearance. After Tokyo gave birth, the director switched targets and decided to gamble on Tokyo's kid instead, as a new vessel to achieve immortality because she believes that the child of two Hirokos might be able to overcome the disease. Her plans were disrupted during the military siege, and she eventually ends up in Nada, a little girl from the fourth generation of kids in heaven, and eventually became Mikura. Mikura was the woman who sent Maru on this journey to find someone who looks like him. Mikura used the word Kiriko with Maru, and she also had the Kiro beam. No one knows the word Kiriko unless you were from Takahara Academy. There were a few additional manga panels showing details from the story, like how the Kiro beam worked, and how the uniforms differ slightly between the kids at different years in the academy. Before Heavenly Delusion, the author actually wrote a very different styled comedy manga called And the Town Moves. When he finished his previous series And the Town Moves, he felt a little burned out, but within a year he started working on Heavenly Delusion. It took him about a week to develop the general concept of the manga, but he had been thinking about the story on and off for years since 2013. Some fans asked whether And the Town Moves takes place in the same universe as Heavenly Delusion. The author said it's written as separate worlds, as it would be too sad if it was the same world. But some descendants of characters from his previous series do appear in Heavenly Delusion. The way that Ishiguro writes is heavily influenced by mystery novels, particularly the storytelling structure. Heavenly Delusion was based on a wide range of sources, such as Akira and JoJo, and especially Fujiko Fujio's manga. This was the author's first encounter with science fiction back in elementary school. He believes this genre has such high standards that he hesitates to recognize his own work as science fiction. Not only was the manga's setting influenced by his favorite works, the author also has a big interest in artificial intelligence, mythology, and the study of human beings themselves, all of which plays a big part in the plot. Ishiguro designed the Heaven storyline to have an unsettling atmosphere and a subtle, creepy eeriness about it. Whereas, even though Maru and Kiriko and the others in this dystopian outside world have to deal with man-eaters and all sorts of hardships, he wanted Heaven to feel closer to Hell between the two, and that's what the director tried to bring out in the anime. Life at the supposedly heavenly academy seems to be enveloped by a disturbing atmosphere, while life after civilization collapse is meant to look lively and joyful. In an interview, it was mentioned that the man-eater that ate Haruki resembled a starfish or an infection. The author said having the man-eaters look like infectious diseases is intentional. Bacterial or cancer cell erosion was his design inspiration for man-eaters. He also designed man-eaters based on creatures from the past, such as Cambrian period organisms. The kids have all different superpowers. Taro, who died in the earlier chapters, had super strength. We learned this from Taka, when he said that Taro could throw this boulder to over there, whereas he couldn't. Taro had a crush on Tokyo. Tokyo could become encased in this coat-like substance, and also had a telepathic connection to Kona. For now, it seems like it's exclusively with Kona. For example, even when separated, Kona knew Tokyo was giving birth, but even Kona could not reach her when she is covered in the protective substance. She becomes statue-like. Mimihime had prophetic abilities, and can see visions of the future and the past. It wasn't shown in the anime, perhaps not to confuse the audience, but she saw a young version of Taro in the hallways as one of her visions. She had actual animal ears for heightened hearing. Taka had superhuman athletic abilities and the power to create slashing blades of light. We see this slashing ability in his bird man-eater form. He actually injured Machika once with his blade of light as kids. It wasn't outrightly explained, but Kona saw it and mentioned it as his sword of light, as we see back in chapter 23. After the academy ends up being attacked by military, the chosen children end up going to the outside world. Anzu and Taka eventually get married and have a daughter together. In the end, Taka died by trying to stop Machika from killing his wife, Anzu, who turned into the man-eater Anjulas. He lost the fight with Machika and never managed to get back to his daughter. Totori, the hotel king who walks in on Maru, is the daughter of Taka and Anzu. She's a Kiriko. That's why Maru was able to enter and see her core when he touched her. Kona has a phobia of being in small spaces. Cuckoo can stick to surface like a gecko. She seriously reminds me of Froppy from My Hero Academia. Machika has super strength, speed, and can see in the dark. In a fight against Maru, she fought so well, Maru thought she had the ability to stop time. Nah, he just sucked. After the raid, Cuckoo, Oma, Machika, Tokyo, and Kona, along with one of her babies and Dr. Sawatari, continue living at the school facility. The doctor that Kiriko has been looking for all this time is none other than Dr. Sawatari, who worked at the academy. In episode 13, the academy gets bombed and equipment starts falling down. The doctor gets wounded. He uses his tie to stop the bleeding. Notice the location of the wound. It's in the exact same place as the doctor's scar in Kiriko's photo. He's the same doctor that cloned Tokyo's baby. He has a fetish of enjoying shoe sniffing, particularly when he's stressed. He actually used to be a shut-in before joining the academy and everything. Speaking of shut-ins, the Takahara Academy was advertised to the public as a place to take in and reform NEETs and shut-ins in Japan. Behind the scenes, it was a place for all the science experiments. Kona will turn into a man-eater. We know this for sure because Mimihime has already had a vision of him in that form. It hasn't happened yet in the manga, and we're just waiting to see how it happens. I hope it will be a showdown between Maru and Kona, aka his dad, and that will be an epic scene. In the original manga, the story episodically switches back and forth between the two heaven and hell perspectives. When the production team were developing how the anime should be structured, they discussed the idea of just focusing on either side at a time and going through all the story before going on to the next. They ultimately scrapped this because they felt that it wouldn't add any suspense to the story. Ishiguro does have some regrets to his work, like not making the character designs more diverse and drawing the backgrounds in more detail. If he could, he would even like to go and draw back everything from the beginning again. Familial relationships and heavenly delusions are meant to be kind of corrupted according to the author. For example, Haruki and Kiriko's sibling relationship is not typical. There are no parental figures in the academy, not to mention that incestuous family that guards the 400-year-old Hiruku. This is because the story was inspired by Kojiki, which is a Japanese mythology. As you know, relationships in mythology are kind of messed up, which inspired some of the moments in the story. The moral of Heavenly Delusion is that heaven and hell are two sides of the same coin. There's never been a moment in the past, not even for a second, when everyone was in actual heaven, and personally the author doesn't believe there ever will be. He believes that people will never stop looking for a heaven. That's one of the key themes he wants to bring out. If you like Heavenly Delusion, I also covered other videos on this anime like insane theories, shocking facts, and endings explained.